Hi, everybody. Welcome to our launch show for the DCC number 100 Kickstarter. My name is Joseph Goodman of Goodman Games, and we're going to introduce ourselves. So I will pass the baton to Mike, who's next to me on my screen. Mike, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Michael Curtis. I am the Director of Product Development for the DCC line, as I call myself, the DCC Grand Poobah. No, it's a pleasure to be here because this is the return of core DCC, and I couldn't be happier. I will pass this over to Jen next.
I am Jen Brinkman. For those of you who've not met me or played with me or listened to Spellburn or any of that good stuff, or Sanctum Secorum like last night. And the man of the hour would be...
Hey guys, I'm Harley Stroh. I'm the author of DCC 100, and thank you all so much for coming out tonight. We're really excited to get this thing started. It's been over 6 years in the making, and yeah, we can't wait to really kick it off.
Don't worry, we will deliver the Kickstarter within 6 years. That's our pledge to you. So we're going to cover the agenda briefly for this show. At the end of this show, we will launch the Kickstarter officially. So those of you watching will be the first ones to know it's live. What we're going to do is first talk about the amazing adventure and the amazing map that Harley devised and Doug brought to life. And then after that, we'll preview the Kickstarter page, walk you guys through what the pledge options are and so on. And we'll launch the Kickstarter. And that's a great way to introduce the other window on your screen. Mike, maybe you could move your hand a little bit to show us what that window does.
Welcome. Let me introduce you to the Alembic. This is what we're here to talk about. First and foremost, people, this is the spinny map. Look at this. I'm going to engage spinniness. There we go. Look at this. Imagine this. It is now rotating on a single axis, which we have 360 degrees axis capability. But wait, there's more. Because not only that, we have altered. Oh, look at this! Look at this!
Oh my goodness, Mike!
Boggles the mind, isn't it? We're turning. We have more. So we have this. This is a complex puzzle that we cannot wait for you to try out because it is going to drive you mad. So only if you're playing it. You know, if you're actually running it, it's pretty straightforward. But as you can see, Harley has come up with an incredibly complex dungeon to challenge you. So we can't wait to talk more about it. But as you can see, things roll around, and this is kind of the test print of it. We'll go in probably more as we talk about the Kickstarter, but there could be more involved here. But
so what Mike is showing you is a pre-production mock-up from the printers. There's 3 of these in existence right now. Mark, Harley, and I each have one, and we've used these to make sure that Harley's vision comes to life, and it does. So first, we're going to start telling you a little bit about this adventure and how it ties into this map. And that's a great segue to ask Harley the question. Harley, just tell us a little bit about this. I mean, eventually over the course of the show, we'll cover the whole adventure and the Alembic key and everything, the Zodiac, all the complexities of this adventure. But tell us about this spinning map and how the players and the characters adventure in it.
Right.
And Mike, feel free to show us how it works as he goes.
Yeah. So the eons ago, the Theophages, the God Eaters, they marched their armies, up into the highest peak of the known world, established a monastery, and then proceeded to hollow out the center of the greatest mountain in the world. And within it, they built, what Mike was playing with earlier, this grand alembic, and for the sole purpose. So the reason for this grand alembic is it's going to distill 3 elements: water, fire, and earth. Distill them into a physical form that's devoid of soul. And with this fleshy monstrosity that's been created in the heart of this mountain, they're going to use that as a lure for raw chaos, out from beyond the stars, something that exists outside of time, has no capacity to threaten any of reality. Well, it's been given this doorway, right? This soulless body. The one body created without soul, and so they lure, essentially, they cast this fishing line far out into the nothingness, the ethers, and then this tiny trickle of ebon green, drips down and begins to froth within the base of the alembic. And if everything had gone according to plan, the Theophages, they would have created this vast, unkillable creature, and then freed themselves from the mortal coil. They'd live up to their name, right? The theophages, they'd eat all the gods, and then they'd live in freedom, and they wouldn't, be beholden to gods or deities anymore. But their experiment was so horrifying, so terrifying that the majority of them, they fled the Grand Alembic. And so it's been left to sit there, right? And with just this tiny little bit of chaos trickling down throughout the years. And meanwhile, the elemental channel of fire is pouring down into the Alembic, and earth is rumbling down. These boulders are crashing down into the base of the Alembic, and water, just massive waterfalls are pouring down, and it's all been building and building and building over the eons. And that's when our player characters come in. They happen upon this place of creation that was created for the sole purpose of destroying reality, or at least destroying gods, so that humankind could be free. And then what the players do when they find this place is the adventure, right? That's where it gets interesting. That's where it gets cool, because they have in their capacity. And maybe Mike, can you show us the Alembic key real quick?
So there's not just a map that spins, there's also a handout that spins called the Alembic key. It's got an inside wheel and an outside wheel.
Right. And so, okay, so this is a player handout that the PCs can discover. And that key, that Alembic key, is a relic created by the theophages, by the god eaters, to rotate, this dungeon and transform the dungeon. And so, so through the course of the adventure, the players will discover the Alembic key, and they'll start to rotate it, and they might move, Void into the house of the goat, or they spin the key in different ways, which then transforms the dungeon. But it's also, yes, exactly, thank you, Mike. And so it's transforming the dungeon, but at the same time, it's working this alchemical magic upon the player characters, and so it's transforming them at the same time. And so they're adventuring through this dungeon. They have the solution with them at all times, but but using that solution comes with a cost, of course, right? Because it's DCC.
So the players basically have a remote control for the dungeon.
Yes. Right. It's cool. It's too cool for them not to play with, right? Like I think you said it early on, Joseph. You're like, well, this is sweet, but there's just one person, one judge, who's doing all the rotating. You're like, we have to give the players something to play with. And so not only do they have something to play with, but they're actually controlling, the dungeon itself. And so, almost they're the ones, in charge of rotating the maps, attempting to puzzle their way through, and then transforming reality as they go.
And now, as I recall, and the adventure better than me, but as you turn the big wheel, the spinning wheels, the tiny wheels also turn 180, if I remember correctly. Walk us through that so I remember this correctly.
Here, Mike, bring Void back down to the worm, right? The original one.
By the way, for you viewers, that's an bring Void back down to the worm. It may sound kind of wild, but there's Zodiac houses as well. So we'll explain all this.
Okay.
So
just
another day in the office here at Goodman Games. How many emails I get?
Right? But that's so cool. To have a gaming experience where you say like, no, I want our players to be shouting, no, we need Void in the house of the worm, damn it. And somebody else is shouting, no, we need Void in the house of the wolf, so our warrior can do what he needs to do. But anyways, okay, so to describe the overview of the map, you have that big rotating center area, that's the Alembic, that's the cavernous bowl that is capturing all these three elements. And smart viewers will be like, well, Harley, why'd you leave out air? And that's really important. But it's capturing three of these elements. And then on the outside, we call it this backer panel. There's four houses of the Zodiac. There's worm, wolf, goat, and lion. And yeah, exactly. And so those are all houses of the Zodiac within the theophages, mystic, structure of the universe. And so as the players move the Alembic key, the map always moves with them. So Mike, if we were to spin Void 180 degrees so that Void is in the house of the goat. Now, so for the judge's sake, we could have made this really complicated, but we chose not to, because the players will make things complicated no matter what. And so the map had to be, the foundation of this adventure had to be really simple so that the judges could run it really well. And so in any time that the players rotate, the Alembic key, also what happens is all those elemental spheres rotate 180 degrees, right? And so, they've moved, Void into the House of the Goat, and all of a sudden, what were open portals, into the center of Alembic are now facing outward, and passageways that were previously blocked can now be entered through by the PCs. And so it's going to be the players, futzing with that Alembic, or the Alembic key rather, that's the solution to the adventure, but also their greatest danger, right? Because as they're spinning this Alembic key, as they're rotating the elemental spheres through this grand alchemical experiment, that frothing star rot, that chaos, that air, that water, that or not air, but fire and earth down at the base of the Alembic is slowly taking form and becoming more defined. And so the more that the players futz with the thing, the more this horrific, more the Theophages experiment comes full circle. And if they spend too long spinning the wheel and distilling those elements in chaos, well, they release this monster which breaks free of the mountain and consumes all of creation, and your campaign's over.
Wait, what? This is where we talk about it.
It's level 5, right?
Yeah, we're achieving a new level at Goodman Games, not just a TPK, but Mike, what was the term you used?
It's a total universe killer.
A tuck, total universe kill. You can pull that off in this adventure.
Yeah, so that's kind of an overview of what the map is doing in general. The players hold the Alembic key. They're rotating it, transforming the map, and then the map is swirling and then swirling around, and the players are advancing through the Zodiac, and when they're in different houses of the Zodiac, their own powers manifest in different ways. And
then you can't quite see it at this scale, but Harley did a very careful job mapping out this amazing map. So as things rotate in certain ways, they still connect, like passages still connect. And Doug rendered it perfectly, and then the printer got it just right in this mock-up. So it actually all works, which is the crazy part. As you spin these things, it all works, and passages connect and then don't connect and then turn into a dead end, and there's like a secret door that connects properly, and it's really cool the way it came together.
It is a thing of beauty.
Yeah, Doug did a wonderful job. You think back to the map work he did for Sailors. And I remember looking at that for the first time, and my mind was just, exploded. Like, what? This is not the blue line maps I anticipated. I thought we were doing like this old school thing. It's like, no, this is something new. This is something beautiful. And he would, for whatever reason, Doug poured enough of himself into those maps, and now these maps. I mean, they're really, the map itself is a work of art. The map itself, when this is all said and done, I'm going to take the mock-up you gave me and have it framed and hung on the wall, because it really is beautiful. It's some of Doug's work at his finest.
And actually, Jen was part of the early playtests and has on hand. Do you want to show them? And everybody, don't get confused. The map you see here is a production sample. Jen has one of Harley's handmade mock-ups.
My camera quality may not pick it up, but if I get it just right, maybe.
You can see the spinning wheels. Yeah.
Oh, there are 4 spinning wheels on the old prototype, because at one point this madman thought that there were actually going to be 4 different pieces of the map that you could travel to, and the void area was actually separate from everything else. The entrance into the huge Alembic with, gosh, at that time it had the 5-pointed star shaped bridges, and that's where comments came up like, there's no such thing as OSHA in the House of Chaos. And
so you were telling us that playtest copy was sent to you 6 years ago, and
yes,
this has been in development for at least that long.
This particular draft is dated February 16th, 2016. So exactly 6 years ago today. Good
And
timing,
Harley-
Joseph.
No, it's amazing. And
This
Harley,
is all
I know-
part of Joseph's grand alchemical, like
Lots of sixes there.
or maybe somebody missed a deadline.
right.
Could also be that.
Dude.
Harsh.
I missed 666 deadlines since then. That's true. This is the last one. It all
How
comes
many-
to fruition.
How many 2 more weeks is that? You know.
My favorite part was when Kickstarter didn't approve this project on their own schedule for some reason. They took a really long time. They didn't like ask for information or anything. They just it sat there and said your project will be approved by this date, and that date had passed long ago. And it was like even Kickstarter needs 1 more week for a Harley Stroh adventure. Cracked me up.
So Fregling had called out, did you calculate how many possible combinations there are? So this is actually a really good question. And it I don't know if it's one of the stretch goals, but Joseph, you can speak that a little bit further. So initially, when I don't know when I sent it to Jen, or it was probably in conversations with Jen, we had each of the elemental spheres, like they would rotate 1/4. And so there was a lot more, potential permutations. And it became really clear through playtesting that like while that was a really cool idea, well, we'll rotate the big sphere,
A lot, man.
right? Like keeping track of all the smaller spheres. It needs to, at the end of the day, it needs to be an adventure that can be run, right? Like it's cool to make this like exotic, thing with unknown depths and everything's going in different increments, but at the end of the day, we simplified it intentionally so that it's easier to run for a judge, where the external spheres, they flip in and out, and that center sphere it can rotate 360 degrees. However, I think it was Joseph that suggested, well, we can't do with any blank white space. Why don't we have the opportunity to flip the spheres over and have a blank grid on the backside, so a judge could on their own take this framework and build their own true Olympic that it rotates in increments of 25 degrees and Earth does this and so judges can like devise this to their heart's content with all sorts of permutations and different iterations and make their own real spheres of chaos.
And that is, somebody asked, what are the stretch goals? 2 of the stretch goals are, one of this right now, this example mock-up you see here is printed on what's called cardstock, which is basically like the covers of a DCC module. One of the stretch goals is to upgrade this and print it on what we're calling Monopoly board, like basically full game board stock. So similar to how a Monopoly board would be printed, or a thick board game stock. And then another one is, to Harley's point, to print a blank version of this so that we can allow you guys as creators to draw your own map, the blank game board and even blank dials, or just on the back of them, maybe a grid line, something like that. And that might open up really cool possibilities for third-party publishers or whatever. Say like, print this, put it on your spinning wheel map, and then here's the adventure to go with it, or things like that. Like, so that would be cool, and I think would encourage. I mean, Harley's kind of forged a new level of creativity here, and then we will create a physical tool that can bring that to life, and then to allow other people to leverage that would be awesome.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
Tony Hogard was asking, is there a master chart of which conditions go with each combination? And the short answer is yes. The longer answer is there is a tool in this box that will be used for that purpose. I believe we ended up in the form of a bookmark
Of 4 parts. Well, so
Yes.
Mike's trying to. Well, Mike, can the tentacles show us
Take a
where
step
it's
back,
printed on the
Harley.
map?
Explain the Zodiacs a bit, because we didn't actually explain those, what they do to warriors or wizards or whatever, and then that'll get into Jen's
Right.
answer in the bookmark of 4 parts and everything.
Sure. So again,
There's a lot going
you have worm, wolf, goat, and lion, and each one of these ties to kind of one of the class archetypes. And so when you're adventuring in the house of the worm, down at the base there, if that elemental sphere, the players are down there where the tentacle is, down there in the house of the worm. All of a sudden, wizards and magicians and sorcerers become much more powerful, and clerics find their connection with the divine shrinking, and every spell that a cleric attempts to cast, they fumble the words and the benedictions, and they come up short, and they're offending their gods. Well, and then you can spin it to the opposite of that, to then you start to adventure in the house of the goat, right? And then all of a sudden, it's the clerics that are assuming, mastery, and they're becoming one with their god, and it's elves and wizards and sorcerers that are unable to, all of a sudden, like corruption becomes really common, and that sort of thing. And so the same holds true for the wolf and the lion, for warriors and dwarves and thieves and halflings respectively. And it's awesome, right? Because this is, again, it's in the player character's hands. So you have the potential of the warriors say, enough of this bullshit, give me that damn Olympic key. We're going to flip it around here. I'm going to nail some mighty deeds on this huge monster, and we're going to call it a day. But doing so comes at a cost, because then all of a sudden, the thieves are bumbling their things, and then the cleric's like, well, I'm going to spin it, and so there's the potential for fractious interparty dynamics, where if the players, if they work it well, if they work as a team, despite all that tension and that stress from this gigantic, four-headed dragon, forming in the center of the dungeon, they could work as a team and move through the Zodiacs when it's appropriate. And we'll bring the cleric, closer to her god, when she needs more divinity. And our wizard really needs to pull out the spell check, so we're going to move her, down into the house of the worm. So there's the potential for players to work together and for their characters to work together. There's also the potential for it just, and this happened to one of my playtests, like it just blew out, right? Like the thief is like, no, he's going to backstab the warrior. He's going to take the Olympic. He's going to spin it back to, where everything's working out just fine for him. And he and the wizard are going to hightail it, out the south side of the Grand Olympic.
Yeah, so G Blaster is actually there. Can you move the key during combat? Would it be cool to move the key to let different party members at time go crazy? Sure, you Absolutely. Can move the map as much as you want.
Exactly. It's all within their grasp, right?
Have we mentioned that the monsters also get affected by the Zodiacs?
Well, of course, like the Zodiac affects everything, right? And so
good reminder, Jen.
So let's go back to Hogarth's original question, right? It's Tony's original question. So on the map, there's in each house there's a little block thing that explains what the conditions are in that house. But what, to Jen's point, there's also the bookmark of 4 parts if the Kickstarter does well enough, or however it works shook out, where it's a 2-sided bookmark. If I'm looking at the top of it, the letters are legible, but the bottom half of that bookmark is upside down. So that would be, that'd be goat and worm. So if I'm in goat, I can read it. If, they're in the worm, all right, I'll just flip it up and now I can read the worm. Oh no, they're in lion. I'm going to flip it over and read lion. Nope. Flip it over and read wolf. And so it really is intended to make it as easy as possible for the judge to run. And also this is where the dice chain came in really handy, because it's not math. It's not like, well, you add 3 now and you add 5 then and 7 later. It's, well, grab your D24 and go with it like that. It gave us the opportunity to really use the dice chain to its best advantage.
It really embraces the DCC style.
Yeah.
And then you had mentioned too the idea that, somebody asked in the chat, well, can't you just spin it to get to this other house? Yes. Of course, the monsters get the benefits too. And then tell us what happens as the drifts of chaos accumulate from all these spins.
Okay, so sorry, we're back in the Grand Olympic, and we're peering over that catwalk, thousands of feet down, and down below us, we can see fire rumbling in and boulders crashing down to the bottom, and this waterfall and the tiniest trickle. And so there's this sloshing thing called star rot, and I encourage everyone to look it up, because there is a really weird phenomena called star rot. Like they find random ooze in places. Anyways, but it starts to define itself. And first it's just like this massive wave, and it comes splashing up, and it throws itself up at the PCs at the top of the catwalk, and it breaks out over the ledge, and these pseudopod, forms, come after the PCs, and if they manage to hit you, they're going to drain your personality until you just melt into nothingness. But that massive thing at the bottom, it slowly becomes defined, and then it's a 4-headed monster, and comes further and further. And now, the monster has definition, and worse, you know, every time it smashes up against the top, it's releasing, you know, warriors that are now coming at you. And those warriors now have weapons and whips, and they're coming at you from all sides. And now, you know, in its final form, you've spun it X number of times. We can't tell the players, you know, how many times they can't spin it, but they can see it coming, right? Because at this point, they've masked, they know that they really want the wizard in Worm, right? And so they're like, oh, we need to make this spell check. But at the same time, they see the you know, the dragon, the four-headed dragon down there with a head of void and earth and fire and water is just like almost ready to break free. Are they going to spin it one more time and distill this monster even further?
Of course they will.
I don't know. Of course they will. Well, or the wizard will, but you know, but the warrior's like, to hell with that. I'm going to throw you into the, we're out of here. And so it's the place where you know, that we love as judges, where we give all these tools to our players to be their own demise, right? You know, like judges don't kill player characters, players kill player characters, especially in this instance.
Yeah. In answer to the question that I saw in the feed there about the party being split, keep in mind there's only one alembic key. So there's only one artifact that can actually be spun in the course of play. If your party's split, someone's SOL. Sorry.
Well, and they can split up. But then all of a sudden, but you know, but remember, every single sphere is still going to move in time with that one sphere. So you know, like, so the wizard and the warrior, they break off, right? They're going to hang out in Worm, and the thief and the cleric decide to hell with this. You know, they're going up to the goat, and the wizard, you know, he spins it. Whoops! All of a sudden, you know, the thief and the cleric, they're trapped somewhere with no means of rotating the dungeon because the Olympic key still rests with the other half of the party. So, you know, can they? Absolutely. And it would probably be a really awesome experience to see how a party dealt with that, with being separated in that way. But for the most part, yeah, my and Jen, maybe you can speak to this, but all my players were suitably freaked out that they hung out together. They didn't do a lot of splitting the party.
I counted up a total of 9 different play tests between 16 and, well, I think just all within 2016, maybe a little bit at the cusp of 17. At first, the first 2 groups I ran were afraid to touch the artifact. So everything was pretty static and stagnant. And if they ran into a dead end, they didn't even think about the possibility of rotating something. No.
They call themselves Reavers.
And so one of the groups I was able to meet up with again and say, okay, look, guys, this is the deal. This is the play test. I need you to push the buttons. And all of a sudden the tracks just fell off and everyone was flying through, and I could barely keep track of it. I've got all these notes. How the heck did we get up to the 18th rotation?
Really easy.
Well, but not in a con game.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I've been spinning this thing for a half hour and there's been no, you know, side effects of it whatsoever. I mean, that's, you know.
And now, Harley, I recall you telling me it takes 6 to 8 sessions, I think it was, or 6 to 9 sessions to get through it. Like, it doesn't seem like there's that many encounters, but each one is pretty dense. You know, there's a lot of content every encounter.
Sure. They're pretty meaty. And you know, and it starts in Punjar. You know, it starts with a treasure map, and it starts in a city, but you know, we use Punjar. And so you know, the players are there, or the player characters rather, they're minding their own business, and somewhere, you know, in the treasure hoard that they most recently looted is this nondescript, you know, sheaf of paper that maybe they've attached no worth to whatsoever, or maybe they've deciphered it, but regardless, they you know, just the possession of that triggers, and you know, this first inciting encounter. And so yeah, then they traveled to Sagarmatha, you know, the greatest peak in the known world, and then you know, there's this cirque at the very top of the mountain, and so you know, you've been traveling for weeks, right? And you haven't seen civilization. You know, you left. First it was the cities behind, then the towns and the hamlets, and then there like maybe some little hunting villages, and then that hermit out. Well, it's been a couple of weeks since you last saw the hermit, and you know, the only thing you've seen are elk and deer and marmots this far, and then you reach this
Marmots.
It's always
marmots.
We have marmots. Then you reach this, you reach this monastery. It's almost alien in this location, right? Because all around you, for hundreds of miles in any direction, there's nothing but wilderness. And here's this very obvious, human-made, creation. And so they have the opportunity to explore that valley, and visit that monastery. And then what Jen was alluding to, that somewhere in the ruins of that monastery, they have the opportunity to open up the Grand Alembic once more. That that was shuttered by the Theophages. When the God Eaters fled, they were like, screw this, whatever, all our dreams, even our dreams are too horrible to consider. We're gonna shut this place down and flee. Pretend we were never this wicked. And the PCs have the chance, to really open this, crack open, the heart of the mountain and walk inside and see what the Theophages were up to. And so, you could, I had one group, my kids group, it took us 3 sessions just to get into the heart of the adventure, what we're looking at here. There's like 3 Kovacs maps. Yeah. There's the valley, there's the monastery, and then there's the Punjar encounter, that all come before we even reach what's the adventure proper.
Or even open this door. That's it.
Right.
We get into the mountain. Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you're on your game, you could maybe, and Jen, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You could maybe solve 1 elemental sphere a session, but I mean, you're going to spend a session, sorting out what's going on. And then formulating a plan. Okay, we're going to take on Earth. Okay, now we have these things from Earth. Okay, we're going to take on fire. Okay, and we know that water is horrific. We're going to visit water last. And so by the time it's all said and done, you've played through 6, 7, 8 sessions.
And if you're truly in it for the campaign play, you can actually have a return to certain spheres, because the entities at the end of each little mini dungeon, if you will, might require something of you.
Yeah. But it's also cool, and we spoke about this a little bit in the video, that it's not a mega dungeon that you're committing to for the next 5 years, right? Like it is at its heart an adventure that's meant to be played, an adventure, that you enter, you run, you complete it. It's a dungeon. It's like, you think of like mega dungeons of yore, and they're amazing, they're alluring, and I love them. And I don't know that, even when I was 12 running games for my brother and his friends, that we ever actually got to every room or solved everything. It was more of a promise than something that was fulfillable. And the intent, and this is kind of the core DCC, right? It's like, run that awesome game now. And it's not like this is going to be the awesome game that you're going to hopefully run for the next year and a half, and maybe Tiamat will break free. No, you're gonna, like if Joe spins that Olympic sphere, 20 times, we could destroy reality today. It's an adventure that can be run.
I mean, there's only roughly about 20, encounters inside here, taking everything, 20 kind of keyed areas. But, that doesn't sound a lot. But once you start laying everything on top of that and everything, there's some things we can't get to until we do this, and then all the rest of it, so it's not one of those. It's a 10-level mega dungeon, and we're going to have to go in here and, and kill kobolds for, a year before we get to anything interesting,
Right. Well, Jen, in running it, did you have an encounter that you enjoyed? Well, you enjoyed them all, but do you have one that sticks in your mind?
There, at the time, I only had earth and fire.
Okay.
We didn't have water completed yet. In the earth sphere, there's a scene where the characters come across, obviously, a Theophage who'd been, shall we say, experimented upon by some entity. And that got really weird really quick, and it was a lot of fun to run from the judge's point of view, because the players were just like, what in the actual. So my favorite monster, though, is over in the earth sphere.
Okay.
Am I allowed to give the name of the monsters?
I think we have to.
They,
nobody's paying attention.
You hear the sound of like squeaking quartz crystals from these crystal zombies that peel away and come towards you. You think
That
it's just a
sound
really
is like,
pretty wall.
Right? But you can imagine it, right? Like quartz scraping
Oh,
itself out of the wall.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was so visceral.
Yeah,
was-
that's
yeah.
visceral. That's the right word. Yeah.
Gosh.
That
okay.
was my favorite part to run. And it freaked a few people out too, which,
Uh-huh.
it should.
Did you guys get a chance to wrestle with the Ifrit and his consort at the end of Fire?
Yes, and the party, my party from the FLGS, back when we used to meet every Sunday, wow, that really was a long time ago. The party actually had to leave after having a conversation, that's the right word, with the Ifrit, and had to go do some wheeling and dealing elsewhere and then try to come back to it.
That's
And
awesome.
I think some of them didn't quite make it past the open Alembic area by that point.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Because the chaos spawn had just spawned a little high.
Now, I have to point out, this is not just an amazing adventure called The Music of the Spheres is Chaos. This is also number 100 in the Dungeon Crawl Classic series. Technically a little more than that because we published a couple 0.5s, and then, if you want to count DCC Lankmar or the holiday adventures or the Halloween adventures and all that, which is pretty incredible. And to be fair to Harley, a lot of the delay on releasing this was me. I just never had time to get to it. Now that Mike's on board, he's really helping us tackle this production backlog. Yeah, cracking the whip. And we're seeing a lot of stuff finally get released and, come into the front, which is awesome. So I think something else that's interesting to talk about here is, as Mike put it, this clears the logjam and opens up the gates for number 101, 102, 103, and so on and so forth. So I'm excited for this, partly for itself, partly because I think you're going to see an era of a lot of amazing adventures coming down the pike. And also for the fact that this gives us a chance to talk about 20 years of Goodman games and in an amazing 100 DCC modules. So something you'll see over the course of the Kickstarter is we're going to post DCC trivia every day. It's amazing how many things we've done in these last 100 plus modules. And we've been talking about little tidbits of trivia we can pull out of it and ask you guys and see who remembers the answer to this one or that one. And then I think it's a week from Friday, we're doing the DCC retrospective show where we're basically going to invite some people on to talk about long ago when they wrote a little adventure module and wondered where it would go. For example, Harley Stroh, who wrote number 17, which seems like a long, long time ago, Legacy of the Savage Kings. And he was inspired by somebody named Brendan LaSalle, who wrote number 10, The Sunless Garden. And, before that, Chris Doyle wrote number 7, Secret of Smuggler's Cove. A lot of these just go way back, and it's kind of incredible. So that's just another really cool part about this, is that I think it's also kind of going to be a new era in the DCC adventure path, for lack of a better word. And Mike, I know you've been excited about thinking about what comes past number 100, 101, 102, all that kind of stuff.
Yep. We have 101, 102, 103 is already in the works, and I want to assure you is that this is going to take a little while to get 100 out, but we are not waiting for 100 to get out before we release 101. Okay, we're done with that. All right, so make a space on your shelf, and and just when it arrives, some months down the way, then put it next to 101, 102, 103, which will hopefully already be sitting there. So, so sorry about that if you're a little, if you have to have that, but we got to get this stuff out. It's been 6 years, it's like, so.
Yeah, and the reason is this map is not easy to produce. Harley, I think it was Gen Con like 2018 or 2019 where you brought your handmade poster of this, and getting the printer to produce it and so on will be, we're going to go through several rounds of proofing and make sure it comes out perfect and so on. So we'll get it to you as fast as we can, but as fast as you can also needs to make sure the maps spin just right and so on and so forth.
And they did a remarkable job. I mean, it, like you said earlier, it actually does line up, like it's one thing for Doug to create it. Well, so Harley, my little brads, everything's spinning and the wheels are getting kind of lopsided. But then Doug, I think I might have even laminated yours, Jen. So
I couldn't remember if you had or if I had, but that makes perfect sense.
but then Doug's artwork, and then I have photos from him early on saying, yeah, look, it actually works. But then for but that's just like a boutique production at that point, right? For it to actually go into mass creation and be able to like produce hundreds of these that work is another thing altogether.
So does this qualify as a role-playing game or as a board game?
Yeah, I know we're pushing the limits here. I don't know. What do you guys think?
It's a role-playing game. I mean, there have been maps in role-playing games since the dawn of role-playing games. So it's just that this map is a little more, interactive. That's all. We're not moving pieces on it, So it's a role-playing game.
And just tell everybody too, it folds up, so you're not going to get a box this. The box is not this big. It folds up and the pieces come off, and you assemble it, kind of like the old days when you punch the spinner thing on the the spinner in your board game kind of thing. And that's something we're still working through with the printer.
Yeah.
And it will fold down into the size of the box, and there won't be,
Exactly.
Now, will the question was posed, in the module itself, will the map be printed on the inside cover as well, or is it just going to be that one folded large map?
I mean, great
I think that would
question.
make more sense, right?
Yeah, because so many parts on this is actually a great point. For those of you who would consider backing in PDF format, keep in mind you have to print and assemble the map for this adventure to work. So you can have a quote map that's a static image like on the inside cover, but like Mike, if you will move this for a sec, the map, and I'm sure you've all seen this 100 times in the stream so far, but the map's got to move or else the adventure doesn't work. So yeah, well, you're right. We could print a static image, but it won't do a lot of good. Except, I mean, it does look really cool. Maybe just because it looks cool.
I mean, the copy I had to assemble when I ran the DCC 100 for Spellburn 100, which I'll share in
Good
here.
reminder. Yeah.
I actually had a cork board that had been hanging on my wall. I just pulled that down, used some pins to stick in the center, and then smaller pins so that the other would just rotate by themselves.
That's a great idea.
So
and actually,
that can be done.
Yeah, that's a great segue to remind everybody that you did run this. There are two sessions, right, on live streamed on Spellburn that people can look up if they want to hear about it or see it.
Yes. Yep. Part 2 is right there. Le Grand Finale.
Okay, good.
And for that one, we actually got Judge Jeffrey Tadlock back on with us. So I ran the game for Judge Jeff, Judge Jeffrey, and Judge Julian.
That was awesome.
And that's a lot of J's.
And yeah, speaking of assemble like it's 1974, as somebody said in here, if you, I love that. These are actually, I forget the term.
We could totally sell a little package of Brads.
Yeah, it's actually a little screw that you have to like screw yourself. See, I unscrewed it, and then you can like, that came out wrong. Take it off. So it's kind of like self-assembly. I love the idea of little punch spinners, like Harley, can we work any spinners into this? There's still time.
There is not time. No.
Just kidding. But anyway, it'll be a little bit of assembly at home because it'll come folded up and you punch everything out and so on. So now we should show off the Kickstarter page itself, I think. Are there any final questions from the chat before we sort of segue to show off the Kickstarter page and start a countdown of sorts?
Do we have diameters? Like what's
Correct,
the in-game size of those circles?
Do we have to like count squares or something? I mean,
no,
it's like this big.
They're about 3 inches.
4 inches across.
Are they?
On the small ones.
It's not big enough for minis to answer the question. I mean, you could like blow it up.
If you had the PDF, if you had the images.
Yeah.
And the big one is 8.5.
Good question.
Oh, that's handy.
Just fits in the box. All right. So why don't we go to a Be Right Back screen and we'll come back in a sec, folks, and we'll give you a preview of the Kickstarter itself. Great. Hi, everybody. So you should now see on your screen a preview of the Kickstarter itself. So we're going to walk you through this, what the pledge levels are. It's basically there's one pledge level, but walk you through the basic idea of this Kickstarter. And then at the end of this, we'll do a countdown and take it live. So I will also point out we hit the character limit on Kickstarter for the name of the project, which is why there's no number sign or the word the. So this is exactly how many characters you can have. There's a great video which you guys can watch later on where we chatted about the whole thing, some of which you heard on this already, and but there's some great anecdotes. If I will scroll down, the music of the spheres is chaos. So we have a general introduction here. which you guys have heard a lot about already. We have an amazing, great video here of Mike spinning the map. Those are Mike's manicured hands, by the way, in case anybody's wondering. And you can see the map spin. What's in the box, which you guys have all seen. Actually, we didn't actually talk about this. There's the map, which we talked a lot about. Then there's the adventure booklet, which is about 48 pages long once the layout's done, we think.
Yeah, that is big.
Yeah, and also it doesn't necessarily seem like 6 to 8 sessions at least, but the encounters are so rich that it goes for quite a while. Then we have a number of additional handout type things like the Limbic key, which is Mike had showed off earlier, another sort of physical key. And then Harley, we didn't even talk about the Sheaves of Chaos. Do you want to talk about those? That's another handout.
Well, just really quickly, like for 15 years, you've been telling us to use the Mad Magazine puzzle.
I love that fold out thing in the back of the magazine where the picture
which is
changes,
actually a thing. Like there are monks, like medieval monks, that would do that. And so I was able to find like they did it with music notes, which is really cool. And again, the music of the spheres is chaos. And so back to Kickstarter, you'll get these Sheaves of Chaos, which will present a mystery that will hopefully offer some insight into the limbic itself, the Grand and Limbic.
We kind of gave away the trick for that puzzle, but hopefully your players aren't watching. It's a really cool. It's a really cool puzzle.
Once Doug or Stephen get their hands on it, it'll be like, it'll be puzzling.
Yes. Then there's also in the box a book of player handouts, which we hope to grow with some of the stretch goals. And then the bookmark of 4 parts, which is a handy handout for tracking some of the things. And I think that's it, right?
Yeah.
That's all that's in the box.
So far.
Good point.
But
wait, there's more. So this section of the Kickstarter tells you about the spinning map, which you guys have already seen. Oh, we didn't talk inspirations, Harley. Do you want to describe some of your inspirations?
Well, so it was DCC 100, like, and who knows if we'll be around to see DCC 200. And so, and if I'm writing any of them, it'll be another 20 years before we get to DCC 200. But yeah, it was you guys were so gracious to allow me to write this adventure. So it was my chance to like pour all my love of gaming into this one big adventure that I knew was only going to come around once. And so of course for DCC 100 we need a dragon, but of course it's going to be a 4-headed dragon, and like let's make everything just, we have this one opportunity, let's make this the game that we want to run. And so there's I don't know, you won't be able to see it because of my back screen, but Darlene's beautiful illustration of the Void of Annihilation, that's an encounter in there. There's our buddy the Ifrit you get to wrestle with, for the old heads. There's references to fantasy wargaming, the highest level of all, and so all these things that I've been collecting in my brain since I was little Harley, 8 years old, exposed to Dungeons and Dragons, all the stuff that I've loved, and hopefully that that you guys love. We poured and then distilled, much like our metaphor of the dungeon, into this dungeon just to make it possibly as cool as possible.
And I think it's amazing how many references are baked in here. I admit I didn't get probably at least half of them. Then later on, Harley would be like, "Oh, that was inspired by this." And I'm like, "Oh, now I clearly see it." So I think we tell you some here. Harley just mentioned some others as well. But I think when you read it, it's just steeped with inspiration in a lot of cool ways. And then stretch goals. Everybody loves stretch goals. So what we want to do is first add a lot more player handouts because there's just so much amazing, rich visual imagery in the adventure that players unfortunately don't get to see the map, or at least not until the adventure's over. They get to play with the Limbic key, but we want to give them some sort of experience as well. So player handouts for that. Then we mentioned earlier, we want to upgrade the map and the spinning wheels to not just card stock, but the actual board game stock. Like if you imagine your Monopoly board when you were a kid, it warrants that kind of treatment. Then the Sheaves of Chaos, which are already a handout, Harley just mentioned those, put them on, I put here durable paper stock, or maybe even like a really nice, cloth paper or something, but turn those into even cooler handouts for the players to experience. One of the stretch goals we have at 125K is to actually include a second game board, which would be white, or maybe flippable, white on one side, grid lines on the other, so that you guys at home, once you've played this and realize how cool it is, can create your own adventures and have the framework to use this setup. Or maybe you only put one of the wheels on, or two of the wheels, or whatever, but you have this framework to create your own adventures based on this idea. Then the Cult of the Theophages is the primary nemesis, and one of the stretch goals is to basically expand on that concept with some of Harley's brilliant writing. And then we had ideas for stuff beyond this. So if this Kickstarter does really well, I mean, this is DCC 100. So one thing that occurred to me was a poster featuring the cover art of every DCC that's ever been, which I think would just be a cool thing to have. And then we had some other ideas too, which I'll have to go back and check my notes. Maybe we'll get to those, maybe we won't. We'll see.
But
But
the
it's the
cool thing
chance
is, but the adventure's done.
Yes.
That 48-page book, that is there's no more 2 weeks that are gonna threaten to like slow anything down here.
No,
Like,
there is not.
like yeah, the adventure's done. The map is illustrated. I mean,
Yes.
and I'm not sure where, you know, Hildebrand or whoever's doing the layout is in those things, but like, you know, the core product is at the point of completion. It's really just saying, you know, how cool can we make it?
Yeah, and you touch on something important, Holly, which is a lesson I've learned with Kickstarters. It's great to make the stretch goals things that don't delay the core project. So in this case, illustrating a couple more handouts is not going to cause a massive delay. You know, upgrading the paper stock. I mean, these days it's actually hard to get paper with the supply chain problems, but it might cause the printer to need one more week to order paper stock or something, but shouldn't cause any major delays. So hopefully we'll be able to get this on track, even with some of the stretch goals that are achieved, or hopefully all the stretch goals that are achieved.
There's a question about the first backer specials being boxed sets.
Oh.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but all of these are a boxed set.
Yes, good reminder. Let me walk through the pledge levels. It's a box set. I mean, I love box sets. We all love box sets. And I think it's just really, there's something special about opening the box and pulling out the components. And this, in my opinion, is the best kind of box set. A number of folks have done box sets that basically consist of 3 little booklets. And that was cool in 1974. And I think we've moved past that. It's cool to have a box set that has a lot of really interesting things inside. And that's what this is, a variety of handouts, a really cool map, hopefully some of the, you know, additional options like the Sheaves of Chaos, the Olympic Key, etc. So it's going to be the kind of box when you open it, it's really fun to dive into. But the pledge levels, we have the $40 PDF edition. Again, reminder to PDF backers, you'll have to print and assemble the physical map for this to work. So just be warned, if you're doing PDF, the little bit of printing and physicality is required. This is DCC number 100. So there's a special pledge level open to the first 100 backers, which is essentially the same box set, but at a $10 discount, $50 instead of $60, and has a cool sticker that Matt designed, a little DCC 100 sticker that we'll be printing with little sparkly effects. It'll look pretty cool. You can put it on your Trapper Keeper. Then we have another pledge level that's open for the first 48 hours. It's slightly more expensive. It has a metallic version of the same sticker, still pretty cool. And then past that first 48, it's the base price of $60 for the box set, which basically gets you the box set and the PDF edition. Then we have a retailer pledge tier as well. Sorry?
No stickers with the
No stickers.
base.
Sorry,
No
no stickers. No stickers. And one thing I forgot to mention too, if you're new to DCC, you can still pledge for this. We have what are called the DCC Quick Start rules, which are the whole thing wrapped into 32 pages. Those are free with a pledge. So when you go through and pledge for it, you can select a little add-on item, or maybe we had to charge $1. We might have actually had to charge something, but the point is, the goal is for it to be free. And then there's what we call the first time fan kit, which we started on our web store about a year ago, which proved really popular. Basically, you get a copy of the core rulebook, 1 adventure module, some dice, and I think it's a judge's screen right off the bat at a great price. And the idea is just to get you started. We'll actually pick which module and which copy of the rulebook and which dice set you get based on what we happen to have lying around in the warehouse at the time. So it's not about getting a specific one, but if you're new, you get everything you need to get started. So that is the Kickstarter. Any other questions or anything before we kick this baby off?
To get
I think we should
kind of
take it out.
laughing at bad player choices. I'll talk with them and see. But I think getting an audio file of Harley laughing at you for bad player choices would be even better.
That's a great stretch goal.
Oh, there you go.
Harley
Yeah.
laughs at you.
You can go to an early spell burn and just loop my giggles. All right.
We're gonna start
Number
the official,
100, or number 11, I believe, episode 11.
we're gonna kick off the official DCC cameo, so you can actually pay to have us come in and give messages of, you know, destruction to your gaming group. That's it. That's it.
That's what I've always wanted, Mike.
All right, so why don't we cut to a be right back screen, Elena, and we'll be back in a sec to actually kick off the Kickstarter. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us in the past hour. We're about ready to launch this Kickstarter. So I think maybe we'll count it down kind of like New Year's Eve, and I'll click the button. There's a little bit of a lag time in Kickstarter from like, I don't know, 5 seconds or something. So in the countdown, it's really going to go live at like 3 or 2 or maybe 1, depending on how slowly or quickly we count down.
It's chaos.
It's chaos, right? Who knows exactly when it'll go live? We'll all find out together. Harley, you want to kick us off on the countdown?
Yeah, sure. Okay, we'll start at 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thanks, everybody.
5.
Thank you guys so much. Thanks for letting us get to DC 100. That's awesome. We'll need to
It's
talk about
awesome.
that more at the retrospective.
Yeah, it is.
I mean,
yeah,
like
it's pretty amazing.
you've released more adventure like modules than like literally any other company ever.
Wow, it might be.
I think I said to Joe, I think if we're around for 2 more years, we actually been Goodman Games has actually been around longer than TSR was.
Oof.
So think about
Really?
that. Yeah.
Maybe I'll post a position for somebody named Lorraine.
Oh,
That'll end things fast.
Harsh.
Sorry. That was kind of harsh. Okay. All right, well, I think we should call it a night.
yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Kickstarter's
everybody.
live. And well,
Thank you
tune in
guys so
on
much.
Monday, I think it is, when Harley's doing a live play. Am I remembering that correctly? Harley's going to do a live play, which will be awesome, and you can see this map in motion.
Yeah, it'll be cool.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
All right, have a great night.